There are a lot of celebrities out there who can speak foreign languages, and I found a whole ton of clips, and in this video I'm going to be reacting to every single one.
Bueno, cuando tenía 15 años yo estaba estudiando español en el colegio en Nueva York y la profesora nos han dicho, bueno, hay una oportunidad a ir a España a estudiar ahí. Entonces yo hacía un intercambio y vivía con una familia en el centro de España, cerca de Toledo. Y me encantó y fue como una temporada en mi vida muy importante. Me encanta España, la cultura latina. Siempre me voy a México, por ejemplo. Me gusta mucho la cultura, la lengua, la gente.
Okay, look at that. Gwyneth Paltrow speaking Spanish. I had no idea. So really, really great stuff here. She's got a very good accent. The accuracy is really good. She's not making mistakes. She's just speaking with this cool, calm demeanor. That's really impressive. So what she was saying is that when she was 15 years old, she was studying Spanish. She got an opportunity to go on a study abroad trip, an exchange to Spain, to Toledo, where she stayed with a host family. And so clearly, like, she's got this upbringing, Spanish has been part of her life as she was growing up. And as we've seen in various videos that I've made in this channel, especially this one over here about Lucy, who learned great Spanish at a similar age. As you see here, like, when a language can form part of your upbringing, that's when it can really solidify. But she's kept it up. She speaks really, really well. I think for me, like, just quite apart from the accuracy of the language that she's using, and granted, this is a very, common topic. I mean, how many times have we all explained, why we speak a particular language? We kind of have that routine down, right? But I think what I find most impressive about this is her accent is very good. It's a very natural accent. And when she's speaking, you can hear that, often English speakers, we tend to swallow our vowels a little bit. We kind of just let the end of words just kind of disappear off into the ether. But she doesn't do this. She's pronouncing her vowels very clearly right until the end of the word, which kind of gives her that accent that sounds really nice and polished. I'm impressed. Now this next one you might recognize. Wow, that is some serious French right there. I mean, for all intents and purposes, she seems to me at least to be native level in French. Maybe some native French speakers in the comments can point out any areas where you could tell that she perhaps wasn't French, but that's pretty awesome. Now, it turns out that Jodie Foster actually went to a French-speaking prep school when she was really young. She went to the Lycée Français in Los Angeles. And she's also acted in French films. Apparently, she can also get by in Italian, Spanish, and German, although I couldn't find any clips of that. Let me know if you have any proof. But she didn't just speak French when she was young, she kept speaking it all her life as well. Have a look at this.
Autobiographique dans tout ça. Est-ce que vous vous retrouvez quelque part?
Oui, un petit peu, parce que j'ai vécu quand même une vie entre guillemets pas normale, mais j'étais pas un surdoué, j'étais pas plus intelligent que les autres, j'étais seulement dans un métier assez prodige.
Alors comment ça s'est passé avec le petit garçon? Je suppose que vous l'avez épié, vous l'avez aidé, ça a dû vous rappeler des tas de souvenirs, non? Ouais, c'est vrai, ça fait quand même 25 ans que je suis devant la caméra, alors j'ai pu quand même lui donner un petit peu l'expérience, mais finalement j'ai trouvé que lui, il travaillait du même façon que moi. Il était très naturel.
I mean, that is super impressive. I mean, that is so cool to see. I'm speechless.
Mais comment on gère quand on est un peu responsable du film, parce qu'on est le héros?
Ouais, peut-être, ouais. Mais ouais, avec eux, ils sont vraiment sympas, et donc moi, je ne sens pas vraiment tout responsable. Et ouais, ils m'aident. Ouais, c'est vraiment une famille. Je pense qu'on tourne pour 2 mois, 3 mois, ouais, on devient une famille.
That is absolutely awesome. I don't know about you, but I find it so inspiring to see people at a young age learning other languages. And then going on TV, I think it's really difficult to underestimate the stress and the difficulty of actually speaking another language, live on TV. And you see someone at such a young age doing this, I think it's absolutely fantastic. And he's so fluent as well. He's got a great accent. He's so calm and collected. But I wonder how his French evolved as he got older.
Ouais, c'est un personnage et une série pleine de l'optimisme et de l'espoir. Et je crois que dans un moment, bien sûr aux États-Unis, en Angleterre, mais j'imagine en France aussi, on allume la télévision, il y a beaucoup de d'actualité qui sont négatifs.
Oui.
Et je crois que c'est mieux de regarder quelqu'un qui nous offre un petit peu plus de l'espoir. Comme Dr. Sean. Ouais.
Yeah, what's so striking about this is just how natural he is. I mean, he's essentially fluent in the language. He's got a fantastic pronunciation. You can also hear the accuracy of the language. You've got a lot of noun, adjective agreement that's accurate, that's correct. Clearly, he's very, very accomplished at the language. How great is that to see? I mean, if I went on French TV and gave a performance as good as this, I'd be extremely pleased with myself. All right, let's see who's next.
Excelente. Okay. You know, cuando yo en la escuela en Liverpool, en Inglaterra, cuando yo tiene 11 años, yo estudio something español. Sí, naturalmente, amigo, sí. Hey. And this is what I learned.
That's so cool. Paul McCartney speaking Spanish. Cool. So I think for me, what this shows is a very good example of how English speakers struggle with verbs in Spanish. And I always hear this from students or people learning Romance languages. Verbs just just trip you up. And if you don't really spend the time to master them using a kind of more natural learning method, like a story learning method, for example, where you kind of learn in a more passive input-based way like native speakers do. You see this when people kind of study in very formal ways, and he was talking there about how he learned Spanish at school. Verbs often just don't bed themselves down. And so you've got him saying things here like, cuando yo en la escuela. Cuando yo, when I, he's looking for the verb, he can't find it. En la escuela, when I, in school. And then later on, he said, cuando yo tiene 11 años, and you can see that he knew it wasn't quite right, and he started cycling through the verbs, tiene, tengo, tenía, whatever it was he said. Whereas what he needed specifically was cuando yo tenía 11 años, or even without the yo, cuando tenía 11 años. And it just goes to show that difficulty in Romance languages and Latin-based languages of really nailing those verbs. And I think it also shows the importance of having set phrases in our language. We all speak with set phrases, right? So things like the phrase "when I went to school" or "when I was at school." You know, when we say a phrase like that, "when I was at school" in English, we're not thinking, what's the verb conjugation here? Like, is it was, were, am? We just say "when I was at school." It's a set phrase that we remember, and then we kind of retrieve from our memory and then just deploy it whenever we need it. And languages are like this. All languages are like this. And so if he had some of this, a lot of the other speakers we've seen here in this video have got these set phrases that they kind of roll out quite well. He doesn't quite have that, but it just shows how important it is to not only learn your verbs, but also learn these kind of set phrases that you can use to describe certain situations, like when you were at school. But how cool is that to be up on stage and actually make the effort to speak Spanish? Now let's see who we got next.
Rejoignez-moi sur le nouveau site première.fr. Le nouveau site, le nouveau website.
The new website.
Yeah.
Okay. Bonjour. Je suis Daniel Radcliffe. Can you write it down for me quickly?
Yeah.
Je suis Daniel Radcliffe. Rejoignez-moi sur le nouveau site de première.fr.
Now, that is just awesome. I love that. So, okay, Daniel Radcliffe, he clearly doesn't really speak French, but he's having a go, and he's there again. He's on TV, and he's learning this thing, and he's speaking, and that is what language learning should be about. It should be having fun. It should be doing things to connect with other people, to have some fun. People sometimes take language learning far too seriously, but there's so much to be said for learning a little bit here and there. And in the breakdown video I did of Moses McCormick's method, we saw how he learned over 50 languages, some to, at only a very basic level, but you can then use that to communicate with people all over the world. So Daniel, he's got some more work to do on his French. Fine, that's totally cool. But I love the fact that he's having a go. You can hear as well there, from a pronunciation point of view, how some of the kind of basic sounds in French, like the French R, the R, I think he was saying rejoindre there. It's quite difficult for for people to get. This is why I think sometimes people are a bit scared of French because the pronunciation can be quite challenging. You can hear that a little bit there, but 10 out of 10 for effort.
Nessuno, è secondo l'individuo. Sono persone che pensano che c'è una differenza, ma secondo me c'è poco. Conosco tanti attori inglesi che lavorano in un modo che si può dire sarebbe americano. Il mio training era quasi tutto americano, russo, ma niente inglese. Era Strasbourg, Jutta Hagen, Stella Adler, Stanislavski, Grotowski. Sono inglesi, ma io non ho avuto un'istruzione inglese.
So this is a really good start from Colin Firth. I'm really impressed. So Colin, apparently he learned Italian to impress his in-laws when he married his Italian wife, and you can see that he's learned it. He's comfortable when he's speaking. He's got a good vocabulary. I really like this. Now, apparently he also said he was asked whether he would ever play an Italian role, and he said that he'd only consider doing that if it was an Englishman who was speaking Italian in the film. So yeah, he's very bashful about his own Italian, and he says himself that his accent is the area that requires most work. And I think you can spot that in places here with his Italian. So Colin Firth's very English. Like, despite being an actor, he's extremely English, and he has quite a closed mouth when he speaks, and you can hear with his Italian in some places he could really do with opening his mouth a little bit more, those rounder vowels, and you could hear at the end of words as well sometimes, and this is something that a lot of native English speakers do, vowels often get forgotten and kind of just like dismissed in the pronunciation of the word. But in languages like Italian, also in Spanish, you've really got to make sure that every vowel in the word is properly pronounced. And you can hear that bit. I'll show you a little example of that here.
Conosco tanti attori inglesi che lavorano in un modo che si può dire sarebbe americano.
Yeah, he says, conosco tanto attori inglesi. Often the vowels right at the end, they just kind of get lost in the mix. So I think he could improve a bit by just pronouncing those a little bit more clearly wherever they come in the word. But good job from Colin Firth.
Das ist wirklich nicht eine große Überraschung. Ich habe in Deutschland gelebt und ich war mit einem Deutschen verheiratet. Also ich kann ein bisschen Deutsch sprechen, aber ich habe so viel vergessen. So, es tut mir leid für mein Deutsch heute Morgen. I am very...
All right, now I can tell that she's got a good accent there, and who's to say whether that was memorized or not, but it sounds like she actually has got a good handle on the language. What were you hearing, Anya?
You know what was amazing? She put a lot of emotion into her German language. Like, I got goosebumps. Now they're gone. I'm not sure if you can still see them, but that was like, I'm a big fan of hers. And then listening to her speaking German, I didn't know she was able to do that. And what I'm impressed by the emotions that she put into that language, because I feel that this is sometimes very difficult when you're like not 100% fluent in the language, but you're still able to put emotions in your speech in that language. And great accents, some minor mistakes. Obviously, you can hear that she's not a native speaker, but she has won everyone's heart who has listened to that speech. Huh?
Yeah, and it just goes to show as well, when there's people that we know who we suddenly hear speaking our language or another language for the first time, it's we have this emotional response.
Oh yeah,
and it just goes to show that just how important or how amazing it can be just to even learn a little bit of a language to use. So hopefully, for you guys at home watching this, hopefully this should be an inspiration for just to show that even if you learn a little bit, it can still count for so much.
Yeah, she's the proof of that. Like, wow. Mm-hmm.
Let's see who's next.
¿Cómo uno puede ayudar a una persona que sabe que tiene un problema de alcohol?
Tiene que saber cómo preguntar para ayudar si tiene dificultades. Tiene que creer. Yo no veo una gran diferencia entre problemas con alcohólico o drogas o con dinero por el internet o con gambling o comida. No es porque tienen hambre, es porque se comen para sus sentimientos, a calmar su dolor.
Now that was interesting. That was an interesting case of Ben Affleck. He can clearly speak Spanish when he's there doing an interview in Spanish. And he didn't have to do that. They would have said to him before, Ben, can we do this in Spanish? And he's obviously said yes. So he's got that confidence. He can speak the language. But at the same time, he's kind of tripping up quite a lot. And you can tell that it's vocabulary. He's got like the foundation there of Spanish, but it's the vocabulary, certain words that he lacks. That's what's causing him those problems. And I think that comes when you don't frequently use the language, Because when you frequently speak Spanish, you've got the facility to either remember key words or else talk your way around it. But one of the things I noticed he did that we see a lot in people that have good natural language ability is you can see him when he doesn't know a word, he'll figure out another way to say it. And so, for example, he was talking about different problems, different addictions, and he said dinero por internet, so like money online. And what he actually wanted to say was gambling. People that have problems or addictions to gambling, but he didn't know the word for gambling, so he's thought, well, how else can I say this? Dinero por internet, online gambling, spending money online. And this is a skill and an attitude that I really admire, which is that I want to communicate with you. I want to say something. I don't know the word I need, but I'm going to try and communicate it through other means. And so that's really, really, really great, especially when you're doing a live interview like this. And you don't know a word, language there's so much composure required to speak languages, and it's one of the things that's really difficult. And so I really admire Ben just for being here and giving that interview in Spanish. Good job.
Mais quand j'étais un enfant, aller au collège, université, ça va être un rêve pour moi. Surtout à Georgetown, l'université que j'étais là, et j'étais étudiante. Et oui, j'adore lire le livre, j'adore la littérature. Ça, c'était mon métier quand j'étais là. Ça, c'est pourquoi.
Now, the thing that strikes me about this is how cool and calm and confident he is. He speaks really good French. He's got a nice kind of rhythm to it. He's got a good accent. He maybe doesn't have all the vocabulary he needs to hand, but he clearly speaks French a lot. And it turns out that Bradley Cooper actually did an English degree, but also studied French at the same time at university. And I think it's that kind of frequent contact over many years with the language that ends up giving you this nice kind of like just cool command of the language. Are you inspired yet? If you are, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for lots more. Now, on to our next.
Ora sono contentissimo perché
Hai detto che vuoi dare una mano al basket italiano. Sì. Cosa vuoi fare? Che idea hai?
Beh, cominciamo con camps, clinics e spero di un giorno crescerlo con una scuola che insegna pallacanestro, però non solamente pallacanestro, no? Ci sono le cose di sport che è anche importante, perché sicuramente ci sono giocatori che vanno a giocare professionali, però ci sono anche altri giocatori che non è possibile. Allora cosa fanno? È importante che sanno le cose di business che surround il gioco, che girano il gioco, no? Scrittura, marketing, business, tutte le cose così. Allora puoi rimanere vicino alla tua passione, però puoi fare un altro modo di lavoro.
This is fantastic. It's just so great to see. Kobe, he actually spent a lot of time in Italy. He retired to Italy, moved to Italy when he retired from the NBA. Also spent some of his childhood in Italy, and you can see here that his Italian is really, really competent. He's just so chilled out. You can tell so much about someone's language abilities by their general demeanor when they're speaking the language. He's just kicking back, sitting in some square in Italy somewhere, just chatting away in Italian, and he's comfortable, he's confident, he knows the language. This is the kind of thing that you really you can't hide behind. So it's just really, really wonderful to see this. He's also got a great accent. His grammar is good across the board. I think that's fantastic. Now, did you notice at the end how he was asking for that word, and how do you say surrounding or around? And this is a quality that, it's easy to kind of dismiss this or say it's not that important, but really, again, remember, he's being filmed. I don't know who's filming him here, but he's talking to someone in Italian. There's a word he doesn't know, and he wants to know that word, and so he stops and he asks how to say that word. And it's that quality from people that really just want to know things, want to improve, have this desire to learn. You know, I would not be surprised if that quality, that desire to learn, really transfers across his whole life, pretty much, not just learning Italian, but also across so many different things in life. It's this kind of attitude of, right, I'm going to go and get it. I'm going to go and learn this language. I'm going to figure out how I can acquire the language. Little giveaways like that are fantastic. Rest in peace, Kobe. All right, then, who's next?
Sí, muchas veces. Me encanta Miami.
Me encantó la película y me gustaría saber cuál fue tu parte favorita de haber participado en esa película.
Hay muchas cosas, pero tengo que decir la verdad, para verlo después, como ya terminada, completo, es algo que normalmente no recibo en mi negocio. Es que como actor es muy extraño para ver su película o poder verlo, porque ser objetivo es casi imposible. Sí. Porque recuerde cómo era, recuerde cómo sentí.
Cuando lo estabas haciendo.
Sí, y es muy difícil tener la sensación que tienen cuando estás en el audience. Y en esta película, cuando...
Okay, that's another very interesting case. So, first up, I think she has a nice accent when she's speaking. I like her Spanish accent. She's really trying. That accent comes from a familiarity with the language, which is great. I have the impression that she's really trying hard to remember stuff, which suggests that she doesn't speak Spanish all that frequently. She's kind of clutching at straws a little bit. And I think I'd characterize her Spanish as being kind of speaking in set phrases. We mentioned this earlier about speaking in set phrases, like phrases that she remembers, and then little bits in between, which she's kind of struggling to put in. And so, once again, this kind of shows the importance of if you learn specific phrases and chunks of language, how they can actually save you when you're in a slightly trickier situation, because you don't have to remember every single word. You could just, reel out the chunks of language. And so she was saying things like, tengo que decir, I have to say. And then she had, es casi imposible, it's almost impossible. Tenía la sensación que, I had the feeling, I had the impression that. And so she's kind of like, she's learned these chunks somewhere and she's using them, and that's what's getting her through the interview. But a little bit like Ben Affleck before, she's kind of like not quite got the vocab she needs to express herself like freely. But yet again, in this scenario where you're doing an interview in Spanish about a film, I mean, how cool is that? So it turns out that that she actually picked up Spanish when she was growing up in Austin, Texas. She had a Spanish-speaking laborers in her garden and things like that. So she got exposure to lots of Spanish. And so I'm guessing that she had the chance to kind of speak to these people then and learn a bit of Spanish then, and she's got these kind of chunks in her mind, but then, and she still remembers them, but other more diverse Spanish vocabulary is just not quite there for her. But again, mad props for doing these interviews in Spanish. These people are fantastic.
Est-ce la propriété de Perrier-Lapadite?
Je suis Perrier-Lapadite.
C'est un plaisir de vous rencontrer, monsieur Lapadite. Je suis le colonel SS Hans Landa.
Que puis-je faire pour vous?
J'espérais que vous m'inviteriez à entrer chez vous, afin que nous puissions avoir une discussion.
Certainement.
Cool, so we got a pretty standard piece of film French here, with a slightly inflected German accent, I guess, speaking very properly. Christoph, he actually has a German father and an Austrian mother, so it's no surprise that he's fluent in German. But I think we should take a look at his French in real life to see how good he really is.
Se souvenir et rendre compte toujours que c'était Quentin qui a écrit ce rôle. Et c'était Quentin qui a écrit et créé ce que je fais. Alors, moi, je fais mon job, oui, bien sûr, et je suis très, très, très honored and elated that it was received like it was.
Yeah, so obviously it's one thing to learn some lines for a film, and it's quite another thing to be put on the spot and to be interviewed by a reporter there. And I think he clearly doesn't speak French all that often. He's struggling quite a bit, but I love the fact that he's out there actually doing interviews in French, speaking French in the real world, and he got a great accent as well, which is really nice. Now, who have we got next?
La mattinata a Fontana di Trevi.
Ho dovuto fare un viaggio molto lungo ieri e allora questa mattina sono svegliata e mi hanno portato alla Fontana di Trevi e pensavo che era un sogno, perché c'era tutta questa gente lì. Io vedevo lo spirito di Fellini e lo spirito dei Mastroianni e dopo pensavo sono qui con Pedro, ma ci sono tante cose simili nel mondo di Pedro e nel mondo di Fellini.
So, nice. So Penelope Cruz, so she's obviously Spanish, and so Spanish is her mother tongue. Now, Spanish and Italian are very close together, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can speak the language well. I remember when I did my Italian project, I learned Italian. A lot of people said to me, well, Ollie, you already speak Spanish, so therefore Italian is easy. Not the case. It might give you a sort of easier way in, but actually one of the challenges when you speak a language that's very similar to another is to actually remove traces of that language that you already know. And so for Penelope Cruz here, it would be very easy for her to kind of speak sort of pseudo-Italian, inserting a lot of her Spanish. And you see this kind of trading of languages a lot between Italians, Portuguese, and Spanish. People kind of half know, they know a few words and phrases in each other's language, and then they kind of carry on as if they speak it. But what's impressive about this is that Penelope Cruz clearly doesn't speak Italian. Her grammar is excellent, and she speaks with clarity and with confidence as well. So that's really impressive for her. Apparently, she learned Italian because there was an Italian movie that she really, really wanted a part in. So she went off and learned Italian especially for that. So good job for her. I think if there's one thing that does come through from this, it is that I think her Italian lacks a bit of expression. You know how in Italian it's a lot more of a sort of singing language, a lot more like Brazilian Portuguese, for example, than Spanish, especially Iberian Spanish, where she's from, which is kind of very quite closed and quite rhythmic in the expression of the words. You can hear in some words that she's saying here that they could really do with being sort of lengthened. Some of those vowels are quite short, injecting a little bit more intonation into there perhaps. But it's a minor criticism because, really she speaks fantastic Italian. And again, doing it in an interview on camera spontaneously, that's the kind of test for people. Like if you say you speak a language, but when you get sat down and asked questions in the language, can you hold your own? And she can.
Did you understand anything that I just said? Because I heard you have some German skills.
Yes, you said 15 Minuten Fragen von Leute und unser Film kommt on the 5. Januar und du heißt Aslam Evans and das ist für Bild.
The thing I like most about that was Jennifer Lawrence's face. She was like looking at him like,
yeah.
So Chris Pratt. Yeah, what are we saying? What are we saying here?
Yeah, I mean, he impressed me too, because that was like out of the blue. It was like, yeah, of course, I understood what you were saying, and he said it such a confident way. Like you said, like 15 minutes of questions, and again, here as an English speaker, it's always hard to work on the R sound, right? He said Fragen instead of Fragen, like the R sound that comes more like from the throat in German. But I mean, you could totally see the reaction here as well. Like, whoa. And that was my reaction too. Because the first question was obviously then, okay, did you understand anything of what I just said? And he was like, sure, I did. And yes, he did.
Yeah, now we've got one more clip of Chris Pratt, so let's roll out.
Ich habe da in der Schule gelernt und ja. Ich spreche ein bisschen Deutsch.
Und du kannst super tanzen.
Ja, danke schön, ja.
Kannst du mir einen Move zeigen, der alle Frauen durchdrehen lässt?
Du musst ja Guardians of the Galaxy sehen. Und,
hab ich, schon 3 Mal.
Yeah, 3 Mal?
Yeah, it's awesome, it's awesome. And I'm going to see you on the big screen as the new Indiana Jones as well, is that true?
Ich weiß nicht. Kein Mann ruft mich an. That means,
Ja, keiner ruft dich an.
yeah.
I can call you.
Nicht jetzt. No, Disney. Nicht jetzt. Ich weiß nicht. Vielleicht.
Aber würdest du gerne der neue Indiana Jones sein? Is that a dream come true? If you would be the new Indiana Jones?
That would be pretty incredible, you know.
All right then, so kind of more of the same, but he's obviously getting caught by surprise here, right? He's having to improvise. What do you think?
So he improvised, and amazing, because when you can make jokes in another language, I think this is the moment where you can say, yeah, he did it. Like he said, like, oh yeah, so yeah, I would love to be the next Indiana Jones, but Disney just hasn't called yet, so why is Disney not calling? And I loved it, like really, it was amazing. He had, and that was interesting. So obviously, as I said before, the ich, the I, the pronoun I is hard to pronounce, and he said ich, which is hard for English speakers. I know that, but in addition to that, he had a kind of Dutch accent speaking German. I was like, really? So what's his background? Like, that was interesting because it sounded to me like a Dutch accent when he was speaking German.
He has an interesting background. He's actually part Norwegian, Chris Pratt, and he's a bit of a language fan. He also, in addition to Norwegian, he speaks French and Spanish as well. I mean, I don't speak Norwegian. I didn't personally hear any French or Spanish in there somewhere, but this can sometimes happen when you speak. You know, often on this channel, when we look at different people and how they learn, we often see people who speak a number of languages almost creating their own hybrid accents when they have to switch from one language to the next. So maybe that's what's happening here.
Yeah, maybe he has learned German in Norway, like when he used to. I guess he lived in Norway then also, and maybe this is where he learned German. So he kind of adopted the. But that was interesting. Yeah, like to me it sounded Dutch because I'm more used to the Dutch accent in German. But it could be from Norway too. But yeah, like congrats, like making jokes in another language, that's the goal. Yeah. That's the way to go.
That is always a magical moment to get to.
Toutes les femmes que tu as rencontrées sont comme ça? Non, mais c'est plus intéressant de dire les femmes qui étaient intéressantes par les femmes qui... Vous savez, les rock'n'roll, c'est les choses très simples. C'est pas une chose compliquée. Ils changent pas beaucoup la musique. Ils changent pour 1 an, 2 ans, et ça revient dans un cercle.
This is one of those things, you know, when you have like an image of somebody, and like someone like Mick Jagger, you just got an image of who this guy is. And I don't know, certainly for me, not knowing much about his life or his background, the last thing I thought was that he would speak really good French and would be able to go and give interviews in French. So I'm absolutely blown away by this. There's actually a lot of examples online of Mick Jagger speaking French, and it's just brilliant. So it turns out that he spent a lot of time in France on holiday with his family as a kid, and he actually owns a chateau now in the Loire Valley in France and spends a lot of time there. But isn't it impressive just how you can be someone with such a specific kind of like vibe around you, this kind of big time rock star, but then also speak this beautiful sensible, like this beautiful language with all this sensibility, and his accent is fantastic. He can really express himself and say what he wants to say. This, I think, for all the ones we've seen today, has been the one that's made me sit back and think, you know, languages, learning languages is something for everybody, and you can find examples of language learning all around the world in the most unexpected places. Who's next?
Estoy muy contento de estar aquí. Es mi primera vez aquí en Argentina y me encanta Buenos Aires. Fuimos a un partido de polo. Okay. Necesito practicar más.
No, está muy bien.
Muy bien. Gracias.
Okay, so having slightly criticised Matthew McConaughey for the accent thing, this is what I'm talking about. So Will Smith here, like you can see, his Spanish is not the strongest, but he's present. He's putting his heart and soul into the accent. You don't really detect the American accent there. You detect bits of English, and that's like when he says the and the which is often a big giveaway from native English speakers, because those are actually very English sounds. But he's really trying hard with the accent, and he's, for me, that is what it means to kind of pay when you do speak the language already, that's what it means to pay respect to the language. So I love that. His Spanish needs some work, but that's cool. He knows that. Apparently, he grew up speaking Spanish on the streets of Los Angeles, like I think many of the people here in this video, and I think that's cool. Let's carry on.
Guide, un livre, comme disons le guide Michelin. C'est un guide pour les Afro-Américains, une nécessité pour voyager. Surtout, partout aux États-Unis, aussi au Canada, mais surtout dans les États du Sud, pour savoir où on pouvait se loger, pouvait dîner, pouvait arrêter pour l'essence.
There's something about actors that is extremely impressive, and they just like, this must just come from being in front of the camera all the time, always being on the big screen. They're just so kind of cool and calm and collected. You get the impression that they could even like not know anything in the language, not speak it, but still give a good performance. Now, Viggo obviously is known for being really good at languages and learning dialects for films. And when he was asked what languages he's learned for films, he said Lakota, 2 kinds of Elvish, Dwarvish, Arabic, French, Danish, Russian, and maybe a bit of Swedish, German and Spanish too. And this, for me, this kind of comes through in his French here. It's just someone who you can just tell knows lots of languages, because even though his French is not perfect, even though he's slow and he's searching for words, he's just got this confidence that I think comes from having studied and having learned lots of different languages. That means you kind of know that whatever happens, whatever you want to say, you're going to find a way to say it. And this is one of the things that gets easier with language learning, with the more languages you learn. So it's just, I really enjoyed this. Let's see who's next.
So, it's una hora y media norte de la frontera de México, ¿sí? Sí. So, mis hermanos mayores, todos amigos, mexicanas, mexicanos, ¿sí? So, me oye poco. And that's where I learned to speak a little bit of Spanish. Let me tell you something, man.
Oh, okay. What was that? That's okay. So this again, to me, shows the benefit of like one of the things that makes Spanish a relatively easier language for English speakers to learn is that you can pretty much think in English and speak in Spanish. So like translate as you speak from English to Spanish, and you kind of get away with it. It kind of works. And you can see that here that Matthew McConaughey can speak Spanish, he can kind of get through, but his phraseology is not natural. His phraseology is kind of clearly coming from English, like when he says mi primero días en este mundo. He's trying to say like my first few days in this world. The grammar is all over the place. Mi primero días. Got an agreement problem there. In este mundo. There's a gender issue there. So he's kind of like, he's got an awareness of words and phrases and he's stringing them together and doing what he can. But yeah, it's kind of like, it's just odd. I think this comes from a bit like Amber Heard before. I think that you've got this situation where people grow up surrounded by Spanish and have this kind of awareness of it, but have never actually properly studied the language. So you've got like an ability to speak without any of the detail that comes from studying. It's really quite interesting. I've got to say though, that the kind of southern drawl that he has here when he's speaking Spanish, I have mixed feelings about this. I'm not one to criticize people for their accents, but I do feel, especially for actors, that you've got this. It is kind of incumbent on you to try a little bit harder with your pronunciation. I do feel that, like for an actor especially, you've got the ability to do accents, to do these things, and it doesn't take much to move slightly away from the accent in your mother tongue, and to put a little bit more effort into the Spanish accent. I don't know. I know people don't like me saying this, but I kind of do feel that's true. So I would prefer a little bit more effort into the accent there. But again, he's on live TV and he's speaking Spanish. You've got to give it to him. All right.
Parce que peur, c'est peut-être excessif pour vous.
Moi, pour toute mon carrière, je n'ai pas peur. Jamais. Parce que pour moi, dans ma tête, je pense, si j'ai peur, avant, je travaillais beaucoup et je assez encore. Mais si je pense, j'ai peur, je peux,
c'est pas bon pour le champion.
Ah, c'est pas un bon sentiment.
Donc
le travail.
Exactement.
Que le travail.
Mais exactement. Et j'adore jouer tous les trois, all of them.
La plus sympa, c'est la.
Now this is just awesome. I mean, so her French is it's okay. It's like clearly not all that fluent, but she can sit there. She'll go into the lion's den there with a group of 7 TV presenters in French and hold her own and do an interview in French. This is what I love about Serena Williams. She's so like her passion and her drive is just it's brilliant, and I love everything that comes along with that. So interestingly, Serena actually said that the reason she started learning French was because she wanted to win the French Open, and she wanted to give her victory speech in French when she actually won. So this tells you everything you need to know about her. And this is something for you to think about as well in your own learning. Do you have a really strong aim? Can you visualize yourself winning that competition and giving that speech in French? Sometimes it's this drive and this passion, this determination to win or to achieve something that can really drive us forward and help us do amazing things. Let's see who's coming up last.
Italy, of course, my roots, my home.
Can you compliment your fans, Italian fans, please?
Okay.
In Italian, maybe?
Amore, sono yeah, sì. But also I'm happy. Felice. Sono felice. Amore, and grazie. Todo il mondo. Thank you.
John, what a legend. Now, before I talk about John, who's been the most interesting character from this video so far? Let me know in the comments who you find most impressive or any thoughts you have on who you've seen here. Now, John is obviously a legend. His Italian is not quite legendary. I'm not actually convinced he knows a single word in Italian, but look, that's fine. There's absolutely no judgment around here. Many of us, I'm sure many people have better things to do than to be learning languages all day long. Frankly, I find it amazing that these celebrities that we've seen here in this video have the time to learn any languages. Really, the amount of things that these guys and girls do, it's remarkable. So full respect to all of them for learning even the minimal Italian. I do find it interesting though how when you get people like John here who talk about their roots and you heard him at the beginning, he said Italy, my roots. I do find it interesting how you can have that feeling and that passion for your roots, but then not take the time to actually learn the language at all. I mean, if you have that passion, would you not take the time to learn the language? I mean, I don't know. Language learning is not for everyone. But I do wonder if he would learn Italian if he knew how quickly it is actually possible to learn the language. What is the opposite of a celebrity? Probably a diplomat. And in this video, I'll show you exactly how US diplomats learn languages fast so that they can do cool stuff all over the world.